Greetings and welcome to today's Extraordinary Connection. My name is Devin Smith and I serve as the pastor here at Romeo United Methodist Church, and I'm glad you've taken a few moments to join me today. It was just yesterday morning that I found myself reading at the beginning of the book of 1 Samuel. In this scripture, it includes the story of Hannah, one of two wives of Elkanah. Now, as with many stories in the Bible, these two wives, they weren't exactly the best of friends. See, the other woman, the other wife, she was able to bear children while Hannah was unable to do so. And the scripture even tells us that Hannah, her rival, used to provoke her severely, to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. And while she had the love and support of her husband, Hannah was saddened by the fact that she was unable to become a mother, unable to bear children herself. And that brings us to the part of the scripture that I wanted to share with you here today. This is from 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to read verses 9 through 16. After they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh, Hannah rose and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. She made this vow, O Lord of hosts, if only you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazirite until the day of his death. He shall drink neither wine nor intoxicants, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine. But Hannah answered, No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all this time. These verses, they spoke to me because I think it shows a reality that often happens in our lives. People being misunderstood. Eli, he saw Hannah in the state she was in, and he made an assumption about her. He assumed she was a mere drunk who had stumbled upon the temple. How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? He asked her. Eli observed. He saw with his eyes. And then with that limited knowledge, he jumped to a conclusion, assumed he knew all that he needed to know, and made a judgment based on that information. And Hannah, she was misunderstood because she was not, in fact, drunk, but was pouring out her heart, pouring out her soul before the Lord. Can any of you relate to Hannah? Finding yourself in that tough place, unsure of what else to do, what to do next. Perhaps you were even deeply distressed, maybe even weeping bitterly. And in that time of need, there were others who judged you based on what they thought they knew, jumping to unfair and untrue conclusions even. That hurts. It hurts to be Hannah in that situation, doesn't it? But perhaps even more challenging for us to think about is, can any of you relate to Eli in this story? Watching the scene unfold, certain you've gleaned from the scenario before you all you need to know, ready to jump to that conclusion, ready to pass judgment on what you see. Think back to those scenarios in our time, in our lives. That probably hurts a little bit to admit too, doesn't it? Those times we've been Eli. And this is far from the only example of misunderstanding in the Bible. We could pull out many, many more. And still to this day, these misunderstandings, they happen all the time, don't they? I had one such example that I'd seen this video a while back, and I went and put it in my future illustrations folder, my folder that I keep of things that I might use for sermons or these devotions. And I knew I just wanted to share this with you here today. So go ahead and watch this video.
Dad, I'm running away!
Dawson, what are you doing?
You said you don't love me, I'm leaving.
Dawson, I never said I didn't love you.
Yes, you did.
I said turn off your PlayStation, it's time for bed. It's not the same thing, get in here. And how are you going to run away with a Minecraft sword and a skateboard? Come on, get back in here.
What did that little boy hear? He heard that his dad didn't love him, right? So his only natural response is to decide to leave. Dad, I'm running away. But when Dad steps out, we discover it was a very different phrase that was said. It wasn't, I don't love you. It was, turn off your PlayStation. It's time for bed. And I love that little boy's amazing response. It's the same thing. In his mind, at least, it was the same thing in that moment. We obviously have a little situation of misunderstanding happening here. What was said, what was heard, how it was received. What that little boy had decided his dad's words meant, and how he was going to respond to it. Now, I don't know for certain that's where the video ends, but I'm sure hopeful the two of them were able to work through those differences. Especially as that dad points out, I don't think he's going to make it too far with only a skateboard and a Minecraft sword in his possession. That's where I want us to take a look back at the scriptures as well. You see, we had this miscommunication, this misunderstanding, this judgment that took place by Eli in regard to Hannah. And Hannah could have blown up in that moment. We understand she was in a raw emotional state. She could have yelled at Eli, could have gotten upset with him, gave him a piece of her mind about judging her. But she didn't. Instead, in that moment, she explained her situation, her struggles, her pain, and her sadness. And to his credit, Eli responds with compassion. He doesn't get defensive and defend his position. He understands that his initial read of the situation was completely off, that he did jump to an unfair conclusion. And it's how he responds, it's what he does that I want to read. It's verses 17 and 18 here. Then Eli answered, "Go in peace. The God of Israel grant the petition you have made to him." And she said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." Then the woman went to her quarters, ate and drank with her husband, and her countenance was sad no longer. Eli offered a word of blessing, a word of encouragement, a word that Hannah received with a gracious and open heart. And at the end of the day, I'd say they were both the better for it. Are there situations or people in your life that maybe you read wrong to begin with? Maybe you made a judgment about? Maybe today you take a moment to offer a word of prayer, a word of blessing for them. You can do it in private if you need to, or if the opportunity presents itself, maybe even do it in person. It's okay to admit we've made mistakes. It's okay to admit we've wronged someone. It's okay to ask for forgiveness. And it's also okay to grant it to another. Perhaps at the end of the day, you both will feel better for it as well, whether you're the Eli or the Hannah in the situation. Until next time, friends, stay safe, take care, and God bless.